What's up, friends? I'm Renat, and you're watching MMA Fight. Another numbered event is in the books, UFC 325, featuring the highly anticipated rematch between Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes. In the co-main event, top contenders Dan Hooker and Benoit Saint-Denis squared off. Also on the card, Fiziev vs. Rufi and Tuivasa vs. Teixeira. This is our full UFC 325 fight recap. Let's get into it. Road to UFC Bantamweight. UFC 325 kicked off with 3 Road to UFC finals, where top prospects from Asia and Oceania fight for a league contract. First up, the Bantamweight final. Chinese fighter Sulang Zhangbo is only 20 years old, with a 10-7 pro record. After a decision win in the semis, he was looking for a finish here. His opponent, Lawrence Louis, was born in Hong Kong but represents New Zealand. Lawrence is 9 years older than his opponent, and a UFC contract was guaranteed for the winner. Zhangbo was significantly better in the first round on the feet. He was more active, and more importantly, his shots were much heavier in the exchanges. Louis' wrestling wasn't clicking, and he dropped the first round. However, the second and third rounds went differently. For some unknown reason, Zhangbo just kept waiting, while Louis worked non-stop. Even though Louis' takedown entries were terrible and his striking was subpar, literally landing pitter-patter shots, he stayed busy, and that was the key. As a result, he was awarded a split decision victory and became the Bantamweight tournament winner. Road to UFC Featherweight. The first participant in the featherweight final was Keiichiro Nakamura. The Japanese fighter has a serious record, 6 out of 7 wins by knockout, and all but 1 came in the first round. Today, he faced Sebastian Salai from Australia. Salai had an amazing first 2 rounds. He was fast, versatile, throwing spinning kicks at all levels, outstriking Nakamura, and even scoring a flash knockdown with a left hook in the second. In the third, he just needed to survive, but Nakamura knew he had to take risks and started forcing exchanges. Toward the end of the fight, Salai went on the attack, but walked right into a counter knee and was knocked out cold. Nakamura, despite being down 2-0 on the scorecards, finds the KO in the third to win the season. Great fighters. Road to UFC Lightweight. Sang-Won Kim was the oldest finalist today. The 32-year-old lightweight from South Korea was making his second attempt to enter the UFC through this show. He faced Dom Marfin from Australia, who won both of his road to the final fights by unanimous decision. The guys fought all 3 rounds and put on an entertaining show, but Marfin was better in every single round. He landed incredibly heavy shots, including elbows. Kim showed miraculous toughness and even landed some dangerous shots of his own. However, with a significant strike count of 101-60 in favor of Marfin, Dom took the lightweight final by unanimous decision. Offley vs. Ija. The prelims were closed out by UFC veterans Khan Offley and Ija. The Australian lost by KO in the TUF 32 final, but still got his UFC shot. Both fighters came into this bout with a 1-1 record in the promotion. The first and second rounds were practically even, but surprisingly, Offley turned it up in the third. Ija seemingly gassed out in the second and became less active, while Offley stayed slightly ahead in total strikes, which earned him the third round. Khan Offley took the majority decision victory. One judge scored it a draw, seeing a 10-8 in the second round, while the other 2 saw the round 10-8, but still saw Offley as the winner. Mikhailov vs. Elliott. The main prelims started with Jonathan Mikhailov and Oban Elliott. The Australian had only 1 UFC fight under his belt, a decision win in February 2025. Oban came in through the Contender Series and had a great start with 3 straight wins, though he lost his last outing due to his opponent's superior wrestling. Elliott was more successful in the first round. He opened a cut on Mikhailov and caught him with a few takedowns. The second round was also going great for Elliott. He was making Mikhailov miss and landing precisely. But at one point, Mikhailov managed to drag him down and take his back. He slickly transitioned to a rear naked choke. Elliott resisted with his last bit of strength, refused to tap, and chose to go to sleep instead. The referee stopped the fight, giving Mikhailov a second-round submission victory, in a fight he was actually losing. Malcone vs. Finney. Jacob Malcone was back in action after a nearly 2-year layoff. His opponent, Toros Finney, was undefeated in his career. Believe it or not, Finney won 3 times on the Contender Series before finally getting a contract. Interestingly, Finney is only 5'7", 170 centimeters, which is more suited for lighter weights, yet he competes at middleweight quite successfully. This fight was a one-sided beatdown. Malcone spent all 15 minutes battering Finney both on the feet and on the ground. The situation was worsened by a leg injury Finney sustained late in the first round, but he was losing the fight even before that. Malcone swept every round on the scorecards for a unanimous decision win. You have to give Finney respect for his toughness alone, surviving to the final bell. Roastin vs. Brundage. Cameron Roastin burst into the UFC with confidence. He earned his contract after a first-round TKO on Dana White's Sedlerson Contender Series and repeated that success in his debut. His opponent, Cody Brundage, has been alternating wins and losses with a 5-6-1 UFC record. Today was do or die for Cody. Roastin applied pressure in the first round and looked much better. In the second, Roastin started strong again, landing a knee. Cody shot for a desperate takedown, but Roastin gained a dominant position and started unloading strikes. The referee eventually stepped in to stop the fight in the second round. Cameron Roastin wins by TKO. Tafa vs. Algeo. Junior Tafa has a losing record in the UFC, but his fights almost always end in a finish. Tafa dropped significant weight to move down to light heavyweight, but he lost his debut in the division by submission. Billy Algeo, after a short-notice loss in his debut, had won 2 in a row. In the first round, Tafa almost pulled off an upset. Early on, he landed a massive overhand that sent Algeo to the canvas. Algeo survived, but Tafa kept landing clean, especially to the body. Algeo's wrestling wasn't clicking initially. He landed a few shots in exchanges, but the round definitely belonged to Tafa. However, in the second round, the wrestling finally clicked. Algeo managed to take the back and easily transition to a rear naked choke. Tafa tapped out. Billy Algeo wins by submission in the second. Salkid vs. Mullicky. Quillan Salkid was one of last year's standout UFC debutants. His opponent was fellow Australian Jamie Mullicky, who holds a 6-6 UFC record. Both fighters immediately traded takedowns. Salkid got the first one, then Mullicky followed suit, but neither could establish control. Later, Jamie tried to clinch, but Salkid hit a beautiful throw from the position. On the ground, he took the back. Even without both hooks in, one leg was enough for him to secure the choke. Mullicky tapped out, and Quillan Salkid celebrated a first-round submission victory. Tuivasa vs. Teixeira. Exactly 4 years ago, Tai Tuivasa was ranked number 3 in the heavyweight division on a 5-fight KO streak, but then the Australian lost 5 in a row. Now, after a year and a half away, Tai is back. His opponent, Talison Teixeira, stands 6'11", 211 centimeters, and looked like a massive threat until a recent KO loss to Derek Lewis. Tai rushed forward immediately, but Teixeira scored a reactive takedown. Just 16 seconds in, he was on top, landing strikes for the duration of the round. Tuivasa got up at the end, but it was too late. 1-0 Teixeira. In the second, Teixeira fought very cautiously from distance, respecting Tai's power. However, he managed to outstrike him and eventually landed another takedown, staying in mount until the bell. The third round was honestly hard to watch. Teixeira looked like he had fought 50 rounds, not 2. He could barely stand. Even Tuivasa looked better, though he was exhausted himself. To be honest, it was a terrible performance from both. It looked like there was no conditioning camp at all. But Talison Teixeira takes the decision win.
Rafael Fiziev was coming back after some tough losses, facing Mauricio Ruffy. In the first round, Rafa started strong, applying pressure and landing heavy middle kicks. He even found the head a few times. However, the second half of the round belonged to Ruffy. He adjusted brilliantly, fighting as a counter-striker and landing great shots on the way in. It was a close 5 minutes with insane speed. In the second round, the story repeated. Rafa pressured, but Ruffy met him with heavy single shots. These were incredibly dense and did serious damage. At one point, Ruffy rocked Rafa with one of those counters. Fiziev tried to hang on, but Mauricio unleashed a barrage of strikes. Ruffy spent nearly a minute trying to finish Fiziev and finally succeeded. Mauricio Ruffy wins by TKO in the second round. The co-main event featured Dan Hooker against Benoit Saint-Denis. Initially, Hooker did well defending on the feet, but Benoit eventually secured a takedown and worked toward a Kimura. He almost had it, but Hooker managed to get back up. They had a wild exchange on the feet where both landed big, but Benoit took Hooker down again and went to work. 1-0 Saint-Denis. In the second round, Hooker unexpectedly tried to take the Frenchman down, which proved to be a huge mistake. Benoit Saint-Denis countered, ended up in mount, landed heavy elbows, and looked for an arm triangle. When that didn't work, he went back to ground and pound, battering Dan until the ref stopped it. Benoit Saint-Denis wins by TKO in the second round. Main event time, the rematch. Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes fought for the vacant belt back in April after Topuria moved up. That first fight was exciting but one-sided for Volkanovski. Despite Lopes coming back with a win over Jean Silva, the league gave him another shot. Let's see if it was worth it. The first round was tactical. Diego pressured, but Alex is a master under pressure. Strikes were low volume, 12-9 in favor of Alex. He landed some stiff jabs and defended all takedown attempts. 1-0 Volkanovski. The second round was also a chess match. Lopes tried explosive bursts, but Alex countered with surgical precision and reset the distance. Volk looked more effective. 2-0. In the third, Alex kept working his style, landing clean singles, but Lopes managed to catch the Australian with a hook, scoring a flash knockdown. That could have made the round 2-1 for Alex. The fourth round was quiet, with Alex simply outpointing Diego. Tactically, he was 2 steps ahead. In the fifth, they wrestled. Alex got a takedown, then Diego got one and even briefly took the back, but Alex masterfully escaped. The final bell rings. With scores of 49-46, 49-46, and 50-45, Alexander Volkanovski wins by unanimous decision and remains the featherweight champion. A masterclass in point fighting that proved the rematch might have been unnecessary. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this tournament. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our new recaps. See you soon, friends. Bye-bye.